In this video, we're going to go ahead and finish up Chapter 14 in game theory and then talk about monopoly in Chapter 11. Don't forget that we're going to review on Tuesday. There's no class Monday, and then Wednesday is the final exam at 5 p.m. I'm going to go a little bit faster in these videos because you have the opportunity to pause, write things down. You can go back and hear again what I've said. So I'm going to go and move pretty quickly through these next few slides. All right, guys, last time we were talking about game theory, and we talked about the prisoner's dilemma, this idea that firms sometimes get into price wars, even though they would like to keep prices higher. But in an attempt to gain market share, they kind of shoot each other in the foot and end up in a worse situation collectively. One way to solve that problem, we mentioned in class, was using some sort of punishment strategy like a trigger strategy. Another way is to solve the dilemma using price matching plans or low price guarantees. Price matching plans are offered by many retail outlets, Home Depot, mattress places, furniture places. If you go into a store and you have an ad from another place showing that the price of something is lower at that other place, the company will give you, they will match the price. And if you've already purchased the product from there and bring in evidence that the price is lower, they will give you a refund for the difference. So these are price matching plans, or sometimes called low price guarantees. It kind of works as an automatic punishment mechanism, because when a company is undercutting another company, that other company will automatically be able to match that with ads from that company that undercut. All right, here we have Best Buy and Amazon, and notice here we have the classic prisoner's dilemma game in the first matrix. So they can choose high or low prices for the same high definition televisions. Profits are in the cells, and they both earn 40 if they both go high. If one goes low while the other is high, then that undercutting firm will get the majority of the profits. They'll go up to 50, where the other firm gets only 20. But if both go low, then both end up in a worse spot. They both get 30 instead of 40, which is what they would have had at a higher price. So this gives us the classic Nash equilibrium outcome of low and low. And we can see that it's a prisoner's dilemma because high and high would result in higher profit. You might want to go back and review those best response circles and squares to get that Nash equilibrium. In the bottom matrix, we have the same setup, only both firms are offering price matching plans. So Best Buy and Amazon can choose high prices and get 40 in profit. But if any of the firms go low, then essentially all firms go low. Imagine Best Buy, Amazon chooses a low price, okay? Then Best Buy will match it because people will come in with an Amazon ad and Best Buy will lower the price. So in all of the three other cells, we have 30 and 30, which is the same profit when in the upper matrix, both were choosing a low price. So in this case, we have two Nash equilibria. We have one in the bottom right and one in the upper left. We can use the concept of the no regrets condition to verify this. The Nash equilibrium definition is that both firms have chosen their best outcome, their best choice, given what their rivals have chosen. So we start with low, low, and there's no incentive to go high from that spot by either firm because they just go from 30 to 30. So there's no regret by either firm if they start at low and low. And that's what we found in the upper matrix as well. However, the change now is if they both start at high in the upper left cell, there's no incentive now to go low. So given the other firm is high, I don't have an incentive to deviate from high. So if both players can say that, there's no regret by either player, which means it's a Nash equilibrium. So high is a possibility here. Firms can settle in at high prices. Essentially what happens is that the incentive to reduce price now has been lowered, because when I reduce price, some of the potential customers I would get, they just take my ad somewhere else. So these low price guarantees can raise price and partially solve that prisoner's dilemma. Let's talk about sequential games. Sequential games are games of alternating moves, right? In the previous games, we assume they choose their actions simultaneously. There can be first mover advantages when we have a leader and a follower. The first mover is the leader, and the first firm in any industry often has an advantage in terms of getting down learning curves faster, especially in high-tech products like CPU chips. They also have the ability to generate brand loyalty and trust. Okay, so just some notable companies that have dominated their respective industries for decades: Intel, Coke, and HP. They were the first movers in those markets. Companies like this can deter entry through their first mover advantage. Let's take a look at a game. Here we have a store locations game where two grocery stores are trying to determine the extent to which they're going to be a player in a new market. We have a rate of return calculation that is simply a play on economic profit, or we're going to start with accounting profit. So rate of return is profit divided by the investment you make times 100. So if I build $1 million grocery store, and then every year my profits are 100,000, then 100,000 divided by a million times 10 is 10%. So we work with percentage rate of return percentages here. Now here's the setup. So we have a larger firm, King Foods, who is thinking of entering with 2 stores or maybe just 1 store, and then a rival who can only enter with 1 store and may or may not enter. So there's a situation that we have here. If the major store, King Foods, is a monopolist, that means they're the only store in town. If they build 1 store, their rate of return is 20%, and with 2 stores, it's 16%. It's a little bit lower because we expect the investment's going to double, but the profit won't double just because there's 2 stores there, right? And then this third situation is if we have King Foods and a rival. So what we call that a duopoly, 2 firms. So with 1 store by King Foods and duopoly, King Foods will earn 12% and the rival 11%. Under 2 stores with a duopoly, King Foods will earn 5% and the rival 3%. Now these are accounting rates of return, so we need to make an adjustment for economic rate of return. And we do that by taking the accounting rate of return and we subtract off the opportunity cost, the rate of return that could have been earned in another location. So we're going to subtract off 10 from these accounting rates of return, and we're going to build a game tree. So here you see a game tree where King Foods is the first mover on the left-hand first node. We call these nodes and connectors. So they can build 1 store or 2 stores to start. And then the rival has a choice to make. Upon observing King Foods' action, they can either enter or not enter. At the end, we have the outcome in terms of the rates of return on an economic basis. So notice here we took the numbers from the earlier table, subtracted 10, and that's what we get. So let's imagine here if King Foods starts with 1 store. The rival at node 2 will then enter because their rate of return 1 is bigger than 0 from not entering. If King Foods commits to 2 stores, the rival here will decide not to enter because note here 0 is better than -7. So the way that we find the Nash equilibrium in this case, sometimes called the subgame perfect Nash equilibrium, is we work from the end back to the beginning of the game. So we start on the far right-hand side and we work back to the left-hand side. So we've already determined that the rival at node 2 would enter and the rival at node 3 would not. Now we work back to King Foods and what they would do at node 1. Well, note here that King Foods knows exactly what the rival's best incentives are, or their decision is going to be at nodes 2 and 3, because it can see ahead to what is in their own best interests. So it knows if it builds 1 store, the rival's going to go ahead and enter, so King Foods will only get 2%. If it builds 2 stores, it knows the rival will stay out and King Foods will earn 6%. So King Foods builds 2 stores. 6 is bigger than 2. So we have entry deterrence here. King Foods decides to build 2 stores, and entry does not happen. So this is a commitment to 2 stores, and notice this must be a credible commitment to 2 stores. It can't be just a threat to build 2 stores. Otherwise, the rival will perceive that they really have still a first mover possibility and can just commit to entering. So it kind of becomes a race to commit to something. Can the rival gain by moving first? Let's switch the game around where the rival's now moving first, deciding whether to enter or not, and then King Foods builds 1 or 2 stores. Now we just transpose from the previous game and the previous table these rates of return. We had to switch the position of a couple of them just to make sure that they were corresponding to the actions taken. And now we solve backward. We start with King Foods at node 2. Given the rival commits to entering, King Foods decides to build just 1 store because 2 is bigger than -5. If the rival decides not to enter and King Foods is at 3, it still only builds 1 store. 10 is bigger than 6. Now we move back to the rival, and the rival at node 1 will enter because it sees the end profit, 1, bigger than the end profit by not entering, which would be 0. So the Nash equilibrium is enter and then 1 store. We can see the path there taken. All right, and again, this highlights the importance of credible commitment. Whoever's acting first has to make that credible commitment. There has to be some cost of, very high cost of going back on that commitment, okay? And so we often find companies like H-E-B and Walmart vying for a new area by buying land quickly and then building up a new grocery store, okay? So we see this often. That was just a repeat of what I had earlier. All right, so here's an example in the press about companies that are using game theory to try and squeeze out rivals. Here we have output of iron ore falling. Demand for iron ore is falling, but the larger companies are increasing production. All right, so that's kind of strange. Usually when demand falls, companies pull back on production. So it says a little bit here. I don't have the full article, but I'll put it on tracks. But you can see that they're betting that their enormous efficiencies of scale will still allow them to profit. And they're betting that these lower prices could force high-cost competitors out of the market, giving them more pricing power in the long run. All right, so game theory is very interesting. It has a lot of application to price wars and the attempts to gain market share and so forth. We'll just have time to introduce monopoly here in this video, this first video. So a monopoly is a situation we don't see very often. There's one seller, there's no close substitutes. Also, there are high entry barriers. This could come from government requiring that or prohibiting you from producing a good for which another company has a patent. There could be trademark protection, copyright protection. So that might give a company or a person a kind of a monopoly position. Ownership of a key input. This could be, Alcoa had control of most of the raw material to make aluminum for many decades. And then also it could be economies of scale, where a company like an electric utility simply has natural monopoly through the fact that other companies competing would have to string up their own wires, infrastructure, and that would be just far too costly for the amount of electricity that is sold, as they have to split the market. So examples here: electricity, natural gas, garbage, utilities generally. Historical monopolies have been De Beers, Standard Oil, Microsoft, and then patent holders. In the next video, we'll talk more about monopoly.